I will start the share screen first. Sorry. Right? Hello? 佢嗰張 list 唔肯俾我哋啊，好長啊，要513個幾啊，我點知啊？
That format is the recommended one by Stonington Council, so you can build that into a QR code registration. So you can have those things.
嗱，我而家上堂啦，我上到3點啊，而家開始。
We're on arrives at a certain start time, certain end time, and it's not like a cafe where people are there at time. That time of arrival may be less important, so the date, name, phone number.
Okay, maybe I will mute everybody first so that we can have a.
We can talk on Hong Kong. That's good.
Yeah. Let me see. Hey, where's the mute? Mute.
Have a designated person who is allowed to take your information, and at that point you can have a verbal conversation about it. I have the conversation over the phone when people ring to book, and then days later when they'll be coming to the event, I have some.
Okay, I have mute everybody, and then I will start the share screen again. Okay, today we are about China's special administrative region, which is Hong Kong. Hong Kong is recorded in history over 2,000 years ago. It is actually first recorded in 221 BC. And by 1163, at that time, the Song Dynasty already identified Hong Kong as a part of China, and then the salt fields are managed officially by the Song Dynasty. Then Hong Kong becomes a colony. That is due to the First Opium War, which is in 1839 to 42. Just before the end of the First Opium War, Charles Elliot is already appointed as the first governor of Hong Kong. And then by 1842, in the Treaty of Nanjing, Hong Kong is given over to Britain as a colony. And that would include the Hong Kong Island and the southern parts of the Kowloon Peninsula. And then in 1856, there's a second Opium War. And then after that, there's a convention of Beijing. And then the north of the Kowloon Peninsula is also leased to Britain for 99 years. Then by 1997, Hong Kong returned to its motherland, returned to China, and the first Hong Kong chief executive is Mr. Dong Jiwa. That is on the 1st of July 1997. And the flag of Hong Kong changed to this flag. There are several things unchanged, and there are many things changed. So let's look at something which has not been changed after 1997. The long-held British practice of no general elections by Hong Kong citizens remains unchanged. Now, Hong Kong under the British rule never has any general elections. So is the current Hong Kong special administrative region. In many schools, English is still taught, and in some schools, English is actually the primary language of instruction. And only when Chinese is concerned, then you will switch back to Cantonese. And Hong Kong, you continue to use Cantonese as the main language of instruction, rather than Mandarin, which is the national language. But recently, Hong Kong schools adopted the practice of 2 language and 3 dialects. The 2 languages we refer to English and Chinese. The 3 dialects, of course, is English, Cantonese, and Mandarin. The border between the mainland and Hong Kong remain patrolled. There is still a border, and people from mainland China need to go through the similar to immigration to enter into Hong Kong. So are Hong Kong citizens. Hong Kong citizens also need to produce identification to pass between Hong Kong and mainland China. Hong Kong remains as an individual member of various international organizations, including WTO, APEC, and the International Olympic Committee. That is a consequence of being a colony for so long. Hong Kong continues to negotiate and maintain its own aviation bilateral treaties with foreign countries and territories. There's a very interesting thing. Hong Kong's airspace is quite small, so almost any commercial air which leaves or enter Hong Kong has to go through the mainland China's commercial the airspace, and therefore the control of flights had to pass from China to Hong Kong when the planes enter into Hong Kong airspace. The flights between Hong Kong and Communist China are treated as international flights, and therefore in Hong Kong there's no domestic flights. All flights from Hong Kong are all treated as international. Hong Kong have its own passport, the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region passport, and this passport is highly recognized in the Western countries, and therefore most citizens in Hong Kong with the Hong Kong SAR passport can enter Europe, North America, etc. with no need of visa. Citizens in Communist China can apply visa to go to Hong Kong. So that is a very strange arrangement. So Hong Kong is treated almost like a foreign country to China, although China now has the sovereignty of Hong Kong. Many people who were born before 1997 are able to obtain a British passport, but the British passport is called BNO, British National Overseas, and this passport does not allow holders of the passport to stay in Britain for over 6 months. So if you go to Britain using BNO, you can go there for 3 months, but you must leave. There's no allowance for them to stay longer than that. And you are also not allowed to work or to basically. The BNO is a travel document. It doesn't entitle the holders for residencies in anywhere except Hong Kong. It is operate under the so-called one country, two system, and therefore it has many political freedoms. It's different. The law system is also different from the mainland China. Hong Kong continues to use the British system of common law, whereas mainland China use the most of them refer that to as the land law or the written law. So the law systems are different between Hong Kong and mainland China. The motor vehicles is driven like what we are driven here in Australia. So the driver is on the right side of the vehicle, whereas in mainland China, the driver is on the left side. So again, there will be road differences between Hong Kong and mainland China. The electric plugs used in Hong Kong obey the British standards, and so are the television transmission. They are using Pearl. Whereas in mainland China, the electrical plugs is a combination of either the American style or Australian style plugs. So again, the electrical plugs are a little bit different between the two areas. So is the telephone system. So the interchange between Hong Kong and mainland China need to be upgraded for transmission, so that they are treated as international call anyway. Hong Kong has a separate international dialing code, 852, and China is 853. So there are different international dialing code. The police in Hong Kong still use the British military drill styles, and the marching words are given in English. Of course, the Chinese army will have their commands and words are given in Chinese. The Hong Kong also use the British date format, which is similar to ours here in Australia. All statues of British monarchs like Queen Victoria, King George, etc. remain in Hong Kong. Many road names which represent this the British colony still remain in Hong Kong. The road names haven't changed. What have changed after 1997? Before 1997, Hong Kong is governed by a governor appointed by the Foreign Secretary from UK, whereas after 1997, the chief executive is chosen by an election committee of 1,200 members. It was initially 400 and then 800, and then now it's 3,000. So the numbers of election committee has increased significantly. These people are mainly elected from professional sectors and some business groups. The word here say pro-Chinese, that's not exactly true. Basically, all business groups are represented in this election committee. The conditions ought to be included is that if you have, it is an association, a recognized association with a associate constitution meeting the standards of Hong Kong laws, and then if the membership of that association is larger than, I think it's 40, then you will be included in this election committee. And of course, there is a prescribed number of electors from a sector. So if your association belongs to a certain sector, then your association will have to compete with similar associations for the seats in this election committee. Now, all public office now fly the flags of PRC as well as Hong Kong Special Administration flag. So the Union flag is, of course, not flying anymore, except in the British Consulate General. The Elizabeth II's portraits disappear from new banknotes and postage stamps. So all the banknotes issued after 1997 will not have the Elizabeth II's portrait, but all the pre-1997 coins and banknotes are still legal tender, and they are still in circulation. All the titles or organizations with Royal have been dropped, with the exception of the Royal Hong Kong Yacht Club. I don't know why this particular cup is given the exemption. So all royal is now dropped except this one. Very interesting. I don't know why. All legal reference in the original laws in Hong Kong when it referred to the crown is generally replaced to the state, which of course refer to the Chinese government. And all the barristers who has been appointed the Queen Council and now is called Senior Council. The local honor system is replaced by the British honor system, and therefore the medals is no longer the British versions, which are replaced by the Bauhinia medal. Bauhinia is the city flower representing Hong Kong. Some public holidays changed. Obviously, there will be no Queen's birthday, and then some of them are replaced by for example, PRC National Day, Hong Kong SARS Establishment Day, etc. So there are a few changes in that manner as well. The original red British-style pillar boxes is removed from the streets and replaced by a new green Hong Kong Post Office box, which is similar to Singapore style. British citizens, of course, are no longer able to work in Hong Kong without visa, so they are without the right of abode. Now, for citizens which were born in Hong Kong, they have the right of abode, or they may not be Chinese ethnically, but if they are born in Hong Kong, they will have continued the right of abode, and that also represents a significant number of people. Many of them with British origin, and some of them with Indian origin as well. The national anthem, the regional anthem, changed from "God Save the Queen," of course, to the Chinese Communist Party's national anthem. I think these are all obvious changes. All secondary school must teach in Cantonese unless approved by Educational Bureau. So before that, many schools, the language instruction is exclusively in English, but now that exclusivity had to be approved. So if your school is not up to standard, then they are not allowed to give instruction in English. Of course, there are international schools, and the international school can teach in whatever language they choose to teach, many of them in English. The secondary school system also moved away from the English system, changing from the 5-year secondary school plus 2 year of university matriculation into a 6-year model, 3 years of junior secondary and 3 years of senior secondary. And the university education extends from the previous 3 years into 4 years. So the number of years for graduating from a university remains the same, but the course have changed because obviously secondary schools operate in a lower cost than the universities. So the universities, the number of universities also increased very significantly in the last days of the British rule. Before the talk of handover, Hong Kong has only 2 universities, the University of Hong Kong and the Chinese University of Hong Kong. But by the time Hong Kong is handed over to China, we have now about 10 universities. So there's a tremendous increase of number of university places in Hong Kong in the last days of the British rule. Why is that? We can discuss that looking at it from a political point of view. There are a number of requirements, so-called the constitutional requirements laid down in the basic law. One particular is the Article 23. The Article 23 states that Hong Kong Special Administrative Region shall enact laws on its own to prohibit any action of treason, secessions, seductions, subversions against Central People's Government, or theft of state secrets, to forbidden foreign political organizations or bodies from conducting political activities in the region, and to prohibit political organizations or bodies of the region from establishing ties with foreign political organizations or bodies. So that is the basic requirement of Article 23. Now, before Hong Kong is returned to China, there are various prohibitions along these lines in the law. So even if Hong Kong didn't enact this Article 23, all the actions which involve treason, secession, seduction, subversion, etc., previously they were word against the crown, the British monarch. But since there is a general replacement of the crown to the state, that means all these treason against the state, secession, seduction, etc., actually are included in the different parts of the law in Hong Kong. What the Chinese government want Hong Kong people to do is consolidate all these laws into the Hong Kong Basic Law, Article 23. But since the return of Hong Kong from 1997 until today, Hong Kong still failed to legislate this Basic Law Article 23 requirements. There is a lot of arguments about that. We will have a discussion of that if you would like to a bit later on. Hong Kong's skyline continues to evolve. There are more, at least 3 new skyscrapers dominating both Kowloon, Tsuen Wan, Victoria, etc., etc., etc. So Hong Kong continued to develop in the way it has been developing. So this is a view of the Hong Kong central region in the foreground. In the background is the Kowloon Peninsula. So this view is most likely taken at the Victoria Peak. So tourists like to go up there, and at night it is really beautiful. So something happened in 2010. China overtook Japan as the world's second largest economy. Since then, the Obama administration have this strategy of pivot to the East Asia, or pivot to Asia, or return to Asia, etc. There's a lot of names for it. This U.S. policy is understood by the Chinese political parties as U.S. attempt to contain China. Proponents of this theory claim that the United States need a weak, divided China to continue its hegemony in Asia. This is accomplished, the theory claims, by the United States establishing military, economic, and political ties with countries adjacent to China's borders. Now, then, Hong Kong has been quite governed quite without riots, etc. But in 2014, there's a Occupy Central movement, or the Umbrella movement. So that is the first taste of the people in Hong Kong being mobilized by external forces to rebel against its own government. So it started around 26th of September to about 15th of December. the excuse that you use is the Chinese government rejected. No, the Chinese government proposed that the chief executive, the nomination of the chief executive must be ratified by the 3,000 election committee member, and then after the ratification, then Hong Kong people will have a vote on who will be the chief executive of Hong Kong. But that was rejected by the democratic parties in Hong Kong, and therefore they started this umbrella movement. In one sense, that is a very large steps towards democracy. The Chinese government allows people to have one person, one vote on who becomes the chief executive. Although the chief executive must be, the nomination must be ratified by the 3,000 election committee. Just remember, we talked about this election committee. The election committee consists of 400 and then 800 and then 12,000, 1,200, etc., etc. So it increased to about 3,000. So the representation there is bordering, but the Chinese government still wants to have a verification of the nominees or the candidates. The democratic parties in Hong Kong rejected the notion, and they started this umbrella movement. So at that time, the chief executive is elected by the 1,200 member election committee through the Article 45 of the Basic Law. The Basic Law there states that the ultimate aim is the election of the chief executive by the universal suffrage upon nomination by a body representative nominating committee in accordance with the democratic processes. So China is trying to enact Article 45 of the Basic Law, but it was rejected. What? Sorry, I think I skipped one of these. The protests began after the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, which is the highest authority of the Chinese government, issued a decision regarding the proposed reform. The decision was widely seen as highly restrictive because it will need the election committee to ratify the nomination. So it was the start, and then you will see people are crowding on the streets. Then we come to this 2019 to 2020 Hong Kong protests. This time, the protest is triggered by the introduction of the Fugitive Offenders Amendment Bill by the Hong Kong government. The issue is that there is a young fellow who went to Taiwan with his girlfriend, and then the girlfriend was murdered in Taiwan because when they were in Taiwan, he discovered that she was pregnant with another person's child. So out of whatever, the woman get murdered, and then he escaped back to Hong Kong. Under the current situation, there is no figurative offender relationship between Hong Kong and Taiwan. So the Hong Kong government want to close that loophole. Now, according to common law, the alleged criminal must be charged and judged in the jurisdictions where the alleged committed the crime. So Hong Kong has no jurisdiction to judge this young person, although he himself confessed that he has murdered his girlfriend and he escaped back to Hong Kong. But Hong Kong have no legal authority to judge him and send him to court, except by charging him as stealing this woman's money. So this young man was released from jail last October. He wanted to go back to Taiwan and to be charged and then to serve for his crime, so that for whatever reason he is willing to face the consequence of his own action. The issue is Hong Kong cannot arrest him because the crime is not committed in Hong Kong, and for the crimes which he has committed in Hong Kong, which is stealing his girlfriend's money, he has served his sentence. So Hong Kong government have no legal avenue to arrest this young man and send him to Taiwan. The Taiwan want Hong Kong government to arrest him and then forward him to Taiwan as a intergovernment actions, which Hong Kong cannot do. But to close the loophole, if the Figurative Offender Amendment Bill is passed, then it will give Hong Kong government the authority to arrest people on the request of the other jurisdictions that a person is alleged to have committed a crime, and then the Hong Kong government is able to arrest that person and then forward the person to the correct jurisdictions for trial, etc. Unfortunately, that set up of a chain of protest events, and eventually the government withdrew the bill on 16th of June last year. But as we all know, the protest didn't last until the eruption of the COVID-19 pandemic. Although the bill is withdrew on September 4th, but there are still other demands, and therefore the protests continue, including the siege of the Hong Kong Polytechnic Universities, as well as the siege of the Chinese University, as well as the destruction of the Legislative Council and the unprecedented landslide victory of the pro-democracy camps in the district council election, etc., etc. So Hong Kong is sent into a big chaos. The approval ratings of the government as well as the police, obviously under the current situation, plummet. So I'm going to show you a few of the photos taken during the 2019 protests. You see tear gas everywhere, and you see roadblocks built by the protesters blocking the main thoroughway in Hong Kong. And they make up of all kinds of blockages, and they are well organized. They wear helmets, they wear gas masks, they wear goggles, and they are mostly dressed in black. With most of them will carry a backpack for whatever equipment they carry. So I'm going to show you two videos. The first one's come from South China Morning Post, which we kept what happened in 2014.
甚至係之後嘅重奪公民廣場呢個行動。
黐線啊！
個心去咗邊度？你哋冇感覺㗎？
超出我嘅預料咯，完全想像唔到會有咁樣嘅集結。咁我會覺得今日咁樣嘅公民抗命係證明咗香港人佢哋可以做嘅嘢係超出我哋作為組織者嘅想像。
我係唔會辭職嘅，因為咧我要繼續做好普選嘅工作。I'm now appointing the Chief Secretary to represent Hong Kong government to meet with representatives of the Hong Kong Federation of Students to discuss constitutional development matters.
Okay, if you want to understand all these protests in Hong Kong, we should try to understand it in terms of international politics, i.e. the rise of China and the current competition and confrontation between United States and China. So let's listen to Martin Jack, a British scholar on this subject.
The idea that China is going to end up like a Western-style society is a nonsense. China will remain China. Now, there is a view in Hong Kong that Hong Kong did well in the period before 1997 because it was smart, because it was clever, because it was free, because it could get on with it, because it was with the British and so on. Now, I think that for the great part, this is a serious misinterpretation of history. Hong Kong did well between the late 1970s and the handover in 1997 because it got lucky. What do I mean by that? It got lucky because China in 1978 started to open up bit by bit, step by step. It didn't open up fully until after the WTO agreement in 2001. So while it was still opening up in a piecemeal fashion, Hong Kong could take on some of the functions that otherwise China would have done. It would have like the front office in some senses for China. And so Hong Kong was the beneficiary of being able to do these things. One of these things, of course, was that if you were a Western firm, a European firm, an American firm, a Japanese firm, and a Korean firm, and you wanted to access the Chinese market, the easiest stopping point initially was to do it from Hong Kong. So it wasn't that they were very smart, it was that they got lucky. They got lucky not because of the British, they got lucky because of China and the role that China was performing. Now, of course, after WTO, then China increasingly, I mean, if you wanted to open up in the Chinese market, why would you go to Hong Kong? It became irrelevant. If you want to open up in the Chinese market, go to Shanghai, or go to Beijing, or go to Guangzhou, or go to Shenzhen, wherever you wanted to go. But you wouldn't, by and large, choose to stay in Hong Kong. So the raison d'etre, the cause of Hong Kong's relative success in that period disappeared. And Hong Kong had to find a new role in the period after 1997. So it wasn't China's fault that this happened. This was a change of circumstances in the relationship between China and Hong Kong. Now, another reason that the period since 1997 has been criticized, particularly by the British, you say the former governor of Hong Kong, Chris Patten, would say, China's not been true to democracy and so on. Now, this, in my view, this is British hypocrisy. Britain ran Hong Kong for 155 years. And I'll tell you something, there was never a semblance of democracy. Did they ever introduce universal suffrage? Did they ever talk about universal suffrage? Not a word of it until after the handover agreement, and then with Chinese rule looming, then it became essential that Hong Kong was democratic in a Western style fashion. This was hypocrisy. How should Hong Kong try and proceed now? Now, I think a word of criticism here of the Chinese government and its handling of Hong Kong. I think that one country, two systems, which was a brilliant solution to the problem of Hong Kong, a civilization state solution to the problem. A nation state would never think of those terms in those terms. But what is one country, two systems? How do you create the balance between the two? The project in the longer run is clearly to create a more unified country. It's not to just keep the two places entirely separate. And I think one of the difficulties that China has had is that initially its reaction to the handover, remember this is 1997, this is China just turning outwards into the world. There was a lot of publicity questioning about how China will conduct itself as the force behind Hong Kong and so on. And so I think that China's natural instinct in that period, an understandable instinct, was to emphasize two systems. I mean, I remember when I lived in Hong Kong for 2.5 years, soon after the handover, and I remember being surprised that the only evidence, virtually, of any Chinese presence, visible presence in Hong Kong, was one Chinese flag flying over one of the buildings near the harbour. There was just no evidence. Essentially, there was not much change. It just carried on in the old form. And there were two big problems with this. One, the governance of Hong Kong is a colonial governance. It's set up in a colonial manner. It's a kind of executive. There's no political leadership. There's no political sense of direction set by a colonial administration, because that's not the job of a colonial administration. That would have been done back in London in those days. But basically, the form of government has stayed more or less the same as it was previously. And the second problem is about the economy. Now, contrary to the way in which the British have historically liked to talk about Hong Kong as this dynamic, competitive economy, by and large, that is just rubbish. Hong Kong is a typical colonial economy. It is not a competitive economy. It's a monopolistic economy. It basically preferred or empowered the tycoons to run Hong Kong, to divide up the spoils between themselves, above all in the field of property where most of the money was made. So this is an oligopolistic and monopolistic economy. That had to be changed. That has to be changed. But unfortunately, not nearly enough change has taken place. So my criticism of the Chinese government, it needs to break the situation in Hong Kong, to allow Hong Kong to go forward. It needs to change those two situations, to have a different sort of administration and to have a different kind of economy, which is more open. Now, let me finish by saying, compare the fortunes of Hong Kong with Shenzhen. Deng Xiaoping deliberately suggested the idea of Shenzhen just over the border, a little fishing port, so it was close to Hong Kong and could model itself and learn some of Hong Kong's lessons. Now compare the situation of Hong Kong today with where Shenzhen today. Shenzhen has made absolutely electrifying progress. It is the technological center probably of China. It is the second only to Silicon Valley in its technical competence and innovation. And Hong Kong? There's nothing like that in Hong Kong. Hong Kong has made zero, they talked about it, but it made zero progress in this direction. I think that the Hong Kong people should press the Chinese government for more rapid integration in China's own plans. So that Hong Kong, rather than just thinking of itself as apart from China, it needs to think of itself more in terms of being part of China. You know, the mentality of the people is, we're different, we're not Chinese. Well, of course, for 155 years, they never learned anything about China. They speak Cantonese, sure, but they didn't know anything really about China. They were ignorant about the North. Their lines of vision were all westwards to Britain or the West or the United States later or Canada, etc., and never north to China.
Okay, that's my presentation today. So I will stop the sharing and then we'll start at the discussion. So I have muted everybody. So if you want to speak, please unmute yourself. So anyone want to start by asking any question and something like that? Anyone? No? No? Okay, if there's no questions, then maybe I can explain another thing is before China opened, how Hong Kong makes living. That means after the Second World War, how Hong Kong becomes the pearl of China. Okay, it's called the Pearl because Hong Kong is at the mouth of the Pearl River. At the mouth of the Pearl River, Hong Kong is on the eastern side. On the western side, there's Macau. So there are two cities. Macau is colonized by the Portuguese, so it was a Portugal colony. Hong Kong is colonized by British, so it is a British colony. At that time, after the Second World War, because of the international politics, China is very much isolated. China do not interact with the rest of the world, except with the Soviet Union a little bit. But there are a huge it's called aspirators. A lot of people live of Chinese ethnicity living outside China, including the Chinese in Taiwan. They have relatives back in mainland China. So for all the communications, for all the goods, for all the needs, for everything else, they go through Hong Kong. Hong Kong becomes the single conduit into China. And therefore, during that time, Hong Kong develops into one of the world's largest import-export economy. Hong Kong's container ports compete with Singapore to be number one for 10 or 15 years. So during that time, Singapore has one of the largest container ports in the world. Hong Kong is either the largest at that time for a time period or the second largest. So Hong Kong and Singapore has been competing as the largest container ports. Why? Well, because most of the goods that the Chinese government needs, the Chinese people needs, has to go through Hong Kong. And most of the trade that come out from China also goes through Hong Kong. So Hong Kong at that time represent about 20% of the Chinese GDP. And almost all goods go through Hong Kong. And therefore, Hong Kong has a very large operation in logistics. The container ports is one of the largest in the world. But as China opened up in the 1970s, late 1970s to 1980s, China started to develop its trade directly with the rest of the world. For a period of time, most of this trade is still going through Hong Kong. And therefore, Hong Kong has been the largest trading partner for China until almost 2005, 2006. After handover, Hong Kong is still the largest trading partner. Today, Hong Kong is the third largest trading partner of China. The first being European Union, the second being United States. And Hong Kong, a city of about 7 million people, is the third largest trading partner. How come that can be? Well, because there is still a lot of business from Hong Kong, linking Hong Kong and China together. And therefore, goods are shipped to Hong Kong first, and then exported to the rest of the world. And therefore, that's counted as Hong Kong's trading unite with China. And therefore, Hong Kong remained the third largest trading partner of China. That's remarkable. A 7 million people country city end up to be the largest trading partner for the third largest trading partner for China. But that changed as the eastern cities, East Coast cities in China started to develop their own ports. So a lot of container now go through, for example, Shanghai port. Shanghai port is now the world's largest container port, and it is large by a large margin to the second largest, which is Singapore. Hong Kong now dropped to about fifth or seventh, and along the coast there are other ports opening up in mainland China, and therefore goods no longer need to go through Hong Kong exclusively. They have choices going through other ports. At the same time, the Belt and Road Initiative means that China is building railway connections with Europe. So if you have some goods by ship, so your ship will leave a port either in Hong Kong or the east coast of China, go down the South China Sea, turn around at Singapore, go through the Market Street, go into the Indian Ocean, go into the Red Sea, go through the Mediterranean Sea, and then turn around, go to Amsterdam. So that takes about 45 days. But if you have a train going from, again, a city in the east coast of China, then the train will be able to reach the west boundary of China in about 1 day. From then onwards, they can travel into Kazakhstan and then go into the Middle East regions and then eventually go to Europe. That take about 2 weeks. So you can compare a 2 week trip to a 45 days trip, which is about 6 weeks. So if, of course, the goods going by ship is the cost is cheaper. But if you have something which is valuable, especially if it is perishable, you will prefer to go through a faster route. For example, the inter-China and Europe trains. These take about 2 weeks maximum. Another route is go up to Siberia and then through Russia, and then from Russia down into Ukraine, and then eventually into Europe. That's another route. That route is also about 2 weeks. For that route has been operating for about 10 years now. Initially, all the containers are full when they leave China and return empty. But nowadays, the containers also returning almost full. The return containers today is about 70% full. Not 100% yet, but China is working on it. Hope to have both the containers going out to Europe as well as returning from Europe are all full. But at the moment, it's going out full, returning about 70% full. So Hong Kong's roads have to change. That's because China's opened up. As Martin Jacks explained, Hong Kong has been lucky, but that luck has run out now. Hong Kong's circumstances change, so Hong Kong people need to think differently in order to continue to prosper. Any other question? No?
Oh, but
Yes.
are the railway gauges fairly standard from
No.
China?
No. At the moment, they have to change about 3 times. The bogies of the train has to change about 3 to 4 times.
Are there plans in the One Belt, One Road to have a common gauge?
Obviously, China want to do that, but the politics is very difficult. So I know that at the moment there are some bogies which will automatically attach to different gauge. So instead of lifting up at the exchange where you need to change bogie at the train's carriage, then you will have to lift up, change the carriage underneath and then continue. But now China is replacing that with a technology. So I don't know whether the technology will solve the problem or the political will will solve the problem. At the moment, it looks like they are trying both ways. If there isn't sufficient political will to have a standardized railway gauge, then they will have a technical solution. Thank you for the question. Anyone else? Yes, unmute yourself, please. Yep.
Does Hong Kong still have the financial control, and will it keep up with the financial control if it doesn't handle the trade itself?
Now, Hong Kong currency is still an independent currency. Hong Kong dollars is not the same as the renminbi. So Hong Kong operates with full financial independence. Every dollar of the Hong Kong dollars is backed up by some assets. The way it works is that Hong Kong has something similar to our Reserve Bank. So when a bank want to issue some bank notes, then the bank have to give some asset to this controlling agency. So the agency will collect, for example, $1 that it will allow the bank to issue $7.8 Hong Kong dollars. So every dollar in the Hong Kong currency is backed up by the issuing bank given to the Hong Kong government. So Hong Kong government has a very large collection of current reserve, which is.
I wasn't really referring to the currency. I was really wondering about the control of the, say, goods. Would they be purchased through Hong Kong rather than direct with China?
Well, like all business, Hong Kong is more like an import-export middleman. So
yes,
as a middleman, you meet the needs of both sides. Of course, the seller wants to sell something, but if you can't find a buyer, there's no deal. A buyer wants to buy something, you can't find a seller, you don't also have no deal. So for that kind of middleman with actions, all these are done by independent traders in Hong Kong. A lot of very independent traders, being some small, some large, operating in that sense. But that kind of trade is now drying up. That's the problem, because a lot of foreign buyers say, well, why I have to go to Hong Kong and ask this middleman to do it, and where he will take a cut? Why can't I go direct to China and have the deal, and therefore cut off the middleman? And that is the problem with Hong Kong. Hong Kong has been losing that ability to be the middleman. When the Belt Initiative was first proposed, Hong Kong actually was given a role to play. Unfortunately, the Hong Kong government and the people doesn't take it up. Hong Kong still runs the common law system. The mainland China runs the continental law system, or the written law system. So the two law systems are different. So if there is a commercial agreement out of the Belt and Road Initiative, where to sign the agreement? For China, obviously like to be signed in Beijing. Okay. But for a lot of other governments say, no, I can't believe you. So at that time, the Chinese was trying to ask people, say, hey, why do you go to Hong Kong? Sign it there. Hong Kong runs under the common law system. And then if you are familiar with the common law system, you will be guaranteed judiciary independence in Hong Kong, and therefore you can trust the Hong Kong system. So that was the role given to Hong Kong at the beginning of the Belt and Road Initiative. But unfortunately, I don't think the law firms in Hong Kong has been taking that up very well. And now a lot of the agreement is actually being signed in Beijing. I think that's a loss to Hong Kong. Hong Kong should be able to say, come here, sign the law in Hong Kong here, which is a common law. A lot of the Western countries will understand. You have been dealing with the British common law system, which is also the common law also the law in the United States as well. Of course, not all countries run common law. For example, Europe, European Union is continental law, so that's a bit different. But unfortunately, Hong Kong didn't pick up that proposal very well. That's my criticism to the top governments in Hong Kong. They lack that long-term vision.
Do you think that China is doing itself a lot of harm by shutting down some of the trade that is happening between the countries? For example, between Australia and China?
Now, I think let's put it this way. You want to go to a restaurant. You go to a restaurant, you want to be served well. You want to be respected. You want to have a courteous a relationship. The goods which Australians sell are not unique. We sell iron ore, we sell coal, we sell beef, etc., etc. We have a lot of competitions around the world. China has been very willing to do business with Australia because it's much closer. But at the same time, when our government, Australian government, is criticizing the Chinese government or something the Chinese government is not responsible for example, COVID-19, the virus didn't come from China. It just happened China was the first country to identify the virus, isolate it, and then sequence the DNA. But our government points the finger at Chinese government saying that, hey, this is Chinese virus. So as a consumer, what would you like to do? Say, hey, you're not treating me well. Why I have to bring my business to you? I can bring my business somewhere else. At the same time, the Chinese business people also trying to find other resource. For example, from Africa, from Europe, from Latin America, etc. When they find a replacement, they are happy to give up Australia because there is no courteous relationships between the two governments. So that is my criticism to our government. That's none of our business. Let's remain an independent country. Let's run our foreign affairs independently. Don't follow the United States all the way because United States only looking after its own interests. It will not be looking after our Australian interests. If we want to continue to sell to China, we at least have to keep a courteous relationship with the Chinese people. But when you are criticizing China for something the Chinese isn't responsible for, then it's not being courteous, and therefore the Chinese say, "Oh, I can find other places to get the resource I want. Why I have to do business with you when you are criticizing me day in day out?"
Albert, if Australia says we would like to investigate where this virus came from,
that's
and
fine.
China says we are going to spank you for asking that question, and they do, then doesn't it seem to you that China is very guilty and is trying to hide something?
No. There is a large misinformation by our media, okay, about this asking to investigate the origin of the virus. The origin of the virus is a scientific question. Everybody wants to know where the virus comes from and how that get into contact with human and then spread in the human population. That is a scientific question. But if you are asking this question and say, we are going to investigate China and China only for the origin of the virus and exclude all other possible places,